My name is Mark Kligman, and I welcome you to our COZ session 39. As always, our thanks to Geraldine Auerbach for we will get started helping to get things and I welcome together for us, and we're very grateful for all the organization that she does. And it gives me a great pleasure to introduce a very dear friend and a colleague, Professor Edwin Seroussi. We could spend the whole hour discussing his bibliography and the wonderful work that he's done. But I thought the best way to describe it is that as we look at 100 years of Jewish music history and think of Idelson and Werner, another name that really comes up as another big scholar is Edwin Seroussi. His monographs, his books, all of his work looks at the macro level of looking at Jewish music in a very broad way, as well as the many specialties and areas that he has. And he paves new ground. He always has new and fresh ideas, and someone that we all admire and look up to. And I know I will say this, and I know dozens of other scholars will say this too, that he's always there to help every scholar and every person involved in the field. And we're always very grateful to have Edwin. So thank you. And our first, Edwin will be co-joined by Courtney Blue, and Courtney is a student at Hebrew University working with Edwin, and Courtney is from Seattle, Washington, the United States, and we'll turn things over to Courtney. Thank you.
Courtney, please open your microphone.
There you go. Yeah. So thank you once again, all of you, for joining us today. It's great to see you all from all over the world, as I've already met some of you. As Mark said, I was born and raised in Seattle and have been very fortunate to study with Edwin at Hebrew University and do my graduate studies there. My work specifically focuses on the Sephardic folk singer Alicia Ben Dayan, who's from Morocco. So we'll touch on that a little bit later on. But today we're also going to be focusing a little bit on new directions in Ladino research. And some of that is based off of Edwin's book, which I'm sure he'll be very excited to tell us a little bit about. It's already been published in Spanish a couple years back, but is going to be published very soon in English as well. So I'll hand the floor over to Edwin to talk a little bit about his book.
Thank you very much, Courtney. It's great to see you. The last time we were both in Jerusalem a couple of weeks ago. So that the fact that both of us managed to run away from Israel and enter the United States is no less than a miracle. I thank, first of all, Geraldine for this initiative and for motivating us all the time into new collaborations and ideas. And certainly, Professor Mark Kligman, Mark, I think you got a little bit carried away. First of all, I think that I hope that my most important contributions are still to be made. Now that I hope I will have a little bit more time after finishing teaching at the Hebrew University, and that will give me a little bit more space to develop more ideas and take out from my file cabinet all those files that remain dormant for so long. Certainly the song in Ladino that Courtney mentions is always has been one of my main fields. It is not by coincidence, considering that, first of all, Spanish is my mother tongue. I was born in Iberian, I would say, or Ibero-American culture. Parts of my family spoke a little bit of broken Ladino, so I knew a little bit about the language. And that was a motivation to dedicate some of my efforts to this field. And the book, in a way, summarizes or puts together a series of studies that I have done on the song in Ladino that develop one after the other in a way that was not very organic. After 6 or 7 of these articles, it became clear that there is a thread, there is a basic methodology unifying all these very diverse studies. And the book that appeared in Spain by the Council for Higher for Research of the government of Spain, it's called Ruinas Sonoras de la Modernidad, in English, Sonic Ruins of Modernity. And the idea that, or the main poetic idea of the title, is that songs, folk songs in general, but songs in Ladino in particular, are like archaeological sites. In a way, they are items that circulate in a way that they mostly refers to their past, not to their future. And in this sense, the book proposes to, as I will show in a minute, to look at the development of this repertoire in terms of topics such as nostalgia, collective memory, and action network theory, in a way that the song itself is like a place, like a site that invites the intervention of many players in the field. These players can be collectors of folk songs, arrangers, performers, and that includes also, if you remember, Courtney, also academics, as our own intervention in the field create part of the network that generates the idea of the song as a site. So in order to translate this theory into something practical, I will tell you about one song just as an example, and then we will talk with Courtney a little bit about this song and a little bit about other subjects that are related to the song in Ladino. So we will do that with a short presentation. This is a song that all of you know. If there is one song in Ladino, in the very large repertoire that everybody knows, is this song. So with any further discussion, we will move into our presentation. I am sure that the figure of Yoram Gaon is very well known to you. In 1968, Yoram produced this long play. We are talking about the old records, called in Hebrew, Romansot Beladino, and in English, as you can see, Romantic Ballads from the Great Judeo-Spanish Heritage. And this is our song.
Cuando la reina Nimrod al campo salía, miraba en el cielo y en la estrella, vido luz santa en la judería, que había de nacer Abraham Avinu. Abraham Avinu, Padre querido, Padre bendito, luz de Israel. Abraham Avinu, Padre querido, Padre bendito, luz de Israel. La mujer de Terach quedó preñada, de día en día le preguntaba, ¿de qué tenés la cara tan demudada? ella sabía el bien que tenía. Adrama.
Sorry about that. I apologize that I have to cut the songs in the middle out of considerations of time. So what do we have here? We have a song that, as I mentioned, is probably the most famous Ladino song on a global basis today. The song tells us a story related to Abraham Avinu, and it includes, as Yoram Gaon sings, is two stanzas. The two stanzas tells the first one about King Nimrod. I translated this for you, so those of you who do not know Ladino can get a sense of the song. What is important to point out at the moment is that the song has also a refrain. Yoram in this recording sang only two stanzas. The first stanza, the second, and then he goes back to the first stanza. In the middle, he sings he sings the refrain three times in between the stanzas and at the end of the song. Why do I point this out? Because my question is very simple. How this song came to be at the moment when Yoram Gaon recorded it? What are the previous developments that led to this specific version, to this specific performance in 1968? And that is the question that leads to the methodology of trying to search for the patterns or the paths of development of each song. The song is considered in Ladino Sephardic research a copla. Coplas are songs in Ladino that refers to topics related to Jewish tradition, Jewish culture, Jewish history, to Jewish texts, etc. I have certain reservations about this term, but I won't go into that. What's important is, following my opening remarks, that we are going to look at the song's journey in time and place. We are also going to see in the song a place, a site of memory. And we will also review all the agents, all the human beings and artifacts creating and transmitting the song. You will see that artifacts have also agency when we are discussing the song in Ladino. These interventions of the agents are done via written, oral, and mechanical procedures that canonize certain versions of the song. So the song develops in different routes, but only few of them get to be preserved, canonized, and perpetuated. And we also have, once we have certain versions, there are interpretations. So the very same version, text and music, can be interpreted in many, many different ways. Also important to my argument, to this methodology, is the archival presentation of the song. That is to say, archives are also agents in the preservation and in perpetuation of certain versions of the song. And of course, all the revivals or the interpretations of the song cater to new aesthetic sensibilities, to new aesthetic ideas as to how to present this song. In the case of Yoram Gaon, we have this folk song approach that has certain echoes from the folk song revival of America in the 60s. We have only one singer accompanied by acoustic guitar, and that sound is the sound that at that time was related to the concept of folk song. We're going to do a little tour. I have maps, all my students, Courtney included, and those of you, the audience who have heard me in the past knows that I teach a lot through maps. We have here the mighty Ottoman Empire at the peak of its development in the mid 16th century. Why do I show this? Because our journey with the song starts in Constantinople of the 16th century, Istanbul of today. And the origins of the text of Cuando el Rey Nimrod o Abraham Avinu, these are the two names that the song has, is in a midrash, a very old midrash called Maaseh Abraham Avinu Alav Shalom, the story of Abraham Avinu, may he rest in peace, published for the first time as an addendum to Sefer Ben Sira in Constantinople in 1580. These old midrashim remain in manuscripts. Here you have the manuscript from the Jewish Theological Seminary of this midrash. And only in the 19th century, these texts are published and made accessible to a wider audience. Here you have this modern edition of 1915. And I just mark a couple of sentences for the midrash so that you can see what the connection between the midrash and the song in Ladino is. It is said that before Abraham was born, Nimrod was a heathen to the faith of the Lord, and Nimrod was a wise king, and saw in the wisdom of the stars that in his days a man will be born that will challenge him. All of you who have a certain sense of biblical sources know that this issue of stars announcing a man that is going to change the course of history has other reverberations. I won't go into that, but certainly this points out to a certain relation between old myths that are shared by Christianity and by Judaism in the Midrash. So this is the opening of the song, of our song, Cuando el Rey Nimrod al campo salía, when he used to go to the fields, he used to look at the stars. So here you have where that idea comes from. Of course, this Midrashim and these ideas circulated throughout the Ottoman Empire, and we move very fast. I'm sorry, this is a very short version of a very long story. We moved to Sarajevo in Bosnia-Herzegovina of today. Here you have the old Sephardic synagogue in Sarajevo, is still there. And why do I mention Sarajevo? Because in around 1790, there was a cantor. His name was David Acohen. He comes from a family of cantors from Sarajevo who used to officiate mostly in the Levantine synagogue in Venice. That is the synagogue of the Jews from the Ottoman Empire in Venice. I will get back to this manuscript. So we have from Constantinople to Sarajevo and now to Venice. This is the beautiful Levantine synagogue in the ghetto of Venice. Whoever was not there yet, I suggest that after the pandemic, you should go over there. And David Cohen endowed us with a manuscript, with his song manuscript. Most of the songs are piyutim in Hebrew. They are arranged according to Turkish scales. I won't go into the importance of that information. What is important for us now is that the song also has many songs in Ladino, written down in Ladino, in Hebrew characters, in the special soletreo, the handwriting of Ladino. Here you can see our song, Cuando el Rey Nimrod, exactly as Yoram Gaon sings it. Cuando el Rey Nimrod al campo salía. And if you can read the soletreo, you can certainly read the text. However, look at how long the song is. It has many stanzas, as you can see here, and it continues into another page. This very, very long song on Abraham Avinu of which only 2 stanzas Yoram Gaon sings out of more than 25, shows that there was an original copla or song in Ladino that was very long and was totally chopped down, if I may say. The original very long song draws from many midrashims and folkloric sources. Yalkut Shimoni, Bereshit Rabbah, I won't go into that. Particularly important is the book Shevet Musar that was printed in Izmir in 1712. This is a book of morals that includes parts of the story of Abraham Avinu told very similar manner as the song. So we have this movement now. We have a manuscript that remained in Venice and it's sent to Jerusalem. So the manuscript that is written by a cantor from Sarajevo in Venice ends up in Jerusalem. And very soon, this manuscript reaches the scholars in Madrid. So in 1988, the song, exactly as it appears in this Jerusalem manuscript, is published in Spain in Latin characters, as you can see, in a modern edition by our dear colleague and teacher, Professor Elena Romero, with an introduction about the whole story and about the song. So my friends, the manuscript was buried in the National Library in Jerusalem. Very few people knew that it existed, very few scholars. But now that it appears in a book that is published in a few thousand copies, it circulates on a much wider scale than before. But this is not the only publication of the song at the time. There are other versions that were published in the Ottoman Empire. So we go back from the present time of Madrid to tell you to go back to the city of Paris. The city of Paris is one of the most important cities in Sephardic history. It's like a hub for Sephardic culture, even though the Judeo-Spanish speaking population in Paris was not very large. It had a tremendous influence in shaping the form of modern Sephardic culture, including the Sephardic song. And in Paris, we have in 1896, in the most prestigious journal of Jewish studies, the great Turkish scholar Abraham Danon from Constantinople, from Istanbul, publishes another version of our song in his important article, A Collection of Judeo-Spanish Romances Sung in Turkey. And Danon says to us here in French, of course, French is the language of the educated Jews in the Ottoman Empire, and Paris is the capital of scholarship. He says that this is songs that he collected from the old ladies in Turkey. And here we have our song appears as number 49 in a very long version, like the one by David Cohen, but this is not exactly the version of David Cohen. That means that this very long song circulates in more than one version in the Ottoman Empire. What is important, my friends, is that the song ends with stanzas that do not appear at all in the manuscript of David Cohen. And these stanzas refer to the ceremony of circumcision. So now our song appears in Turkey to be thoroughly related and sung and performed in circumcisions. So these last two stanzas, for example, speaks about the father of the newborn, that he will be in Siman Tov, that Eliyahu Navi will show up, and that they bless also the Moel, as you can see, so many words in Hebrew in these last stanzas of our song. And of course, the song ends with the wishes that the Goel, the Messiah, will come and Richma a todo Israel, and will redeemed the whole people of Israel. So we started in Istanbul, we moved to Sarajevo, we moved to Venice, we moved to Jerusalem, we moved to Madrid, through Paris, and now we have another object, another book that was also part of the distribution of the song. The collection of songs in Ladino, one of the most important ones, published in Istanbul in 1925, El Buqueto de Romanzas, the bouquet, okay, the flower bouquet of romances. What they did is they took the version that Danon published in Latin characters and they returned it into Hebrew characters, in Rashi characters, as Ladino is printed. So we have Cantica de Abraham Avinu, exactly the same text of Danon, but now returned into Hebrew script. And what is important now for us as musicians is the second line, that little word Seba, or Seba, is the name of the Turkish makam. So we know that the song was performed with music, and was performed in a Turkish style. We don't know exactly which, but we certainly have the information regarding the makam. So we come back to Paris. Paris is always the point of return for Sephardi Jews. And here we are going into our first musical example. In 1937, this album of 4 Sephardic songs are published by a composer named Wolf Simoni. And here we have the score of the song. My friends, this is the very abridged version of the song, very similar, if not identical, to what Yoram Gaon sings. So the issue is that for the first time, we have a version that is directly related to what Yoram Gaon sings in terms not only of the text. We have seen the text appearing before in manuscripts and prints, but now it appears in with music. I am fortunate enough, thanks to the miracles of YouTube, to have a recorded version. Just before that, I want to tell you something about Wolf Simoni, a Jewish composer from Berlin that was a refugee in Paris in the 30s. He changed his name, so it was very confusing in research to trace him until I discovered that he had a totally different name. I was in contact in the 1990s with the inheritors of his estate, and basically what Simoni transmitted in one of his letters is that in 1935 he met a singer from Izmir, from the city of Izmir, and he learned Sephardic songs. He liked them, he transcribed them, and he says, and I harmonized 4 of them in my album, 4 Sephardic songs. The text by Sager it's important. His version has only 2 stanzas. However, it has the exact first stanza as Yoram Gaon, but the second stanza is the stanza related to the Brit Milah, to the ritual of circumcision that appears in the Turkish versions, not the version that the manuscript of David Cohen that doesn't include these stanzas. And as you can see, we have the refrain, Abraham Avinu, Padre Querido, and we have exactly the same melody. So let's listen to the only recorded version I have of this song. The accompaniment, of course, is very modernistic. Okay, we are talking about 20th century music for the concert stage. So the first appearance of Abraham Avinu is like in a concert stage type of performance. Again, I apologize for cutting the song, but if you went to a concert of Sephardic music in Paris in 1937, right before the war disrupted all the distribution of Jewish culture in Western Europe, you could hear perhaps this version of our song. Another crucial player, and I jump again very quickly into, I'm sorry, into the 1950s, one of the major players in the field of Sephardic music in Paris before and particularly after the war was Leon Algazi. Leon Algazi, a very distinguished Jewish composer of liturgical music and researcher too, born in Romania. He belongs to the Sephardic Jews from Romania. Yes, there are Sephardic Jews in Romania too, not only Ashkenazi Jews. And he publishes in 1958 a very important and very influential collection of songs in Ladino called Chants Sephardis that he collected from Sephardic Jews. What is interesting is that the publisher of this collection is the World Sephardic Federation, and the finances behind this book is related to the first or the earlier reparations money from the war. So it's an interesting historical detail. Our routes, as you can see, move around the Mediterranean in many different directions between Jerusalem in the east, Constantinople, and Paris, Madrid in the west. What was missing was the United States of America. And there is an American chapter to this amazing story of Abraham Avinu. In 1963, in the city of New York, most particularly in Brooklyn, lived a very distinguished cantor from Jerusalem, Raphael Yair El-Nadav, that Professor Kligman knows very well, very influential figure. In that year of 1963, a professor of Spanish and Judeo-Spanish from Brooklyn College, Meir Benardete, knocks in the door of Cantor El-Nadav and says, "Can you please sing a few Sephardic songs and record them?" And what he brings to El-Nadav is the book by Algazi. So the book by Algazi includes the version by Wolf Simoni, but without the accompaniment for the piano, just the melodic line, the exact melodic line. And El-Nadav records for the Collectors Guild series of long plays. I cannot go into all these details of all these people involved in creating this product, this amazing production, American production of songs in Ladino. Let's hear a few bars of Cantor El-Nadav singing the song in 1963. Again, I repeat, he's singing the version coming from Paris, but arranged in New York City with his voice as a cantor of Sephardic origins from Jerusalem.
Quando il re Nimrod al campo salía, miraba en el cielo y en la estrella vino una luz santa en la judería que había de nacer Abraham Avinu. Abraham Avinu, Padre querido, Padre bendito, luz de Israel. Padre querido, Padre bendito, luz de Israel.
Regretfully, I cannot go into details of analyzing all the aspects of this song, but just for those who understand Spanish, you heard that he sang bendito and not bendicho like it should have been in Ladino. So there is a formalization, perhaps under Bernadette's influence, of formalizing Spanish according to modern Spanish. I just want to add that Cantor El Nadab was the first Sephardic student of the new Academy of Music in Jerusalem in the 1930s. And this is why he knew how to read musical notation. It's a footnote, but it's a very important footnote. Now, towards the end of this very short tour, very short presentation, I want to speak about two mysteries regarding this song. You agree with me, I hope all of you, and you can discuss with me that later on, that this is the most renowned song in Ladino today. And we have seen that it circulates in many venues, printed, manuscript, and recorded. However, there is one or two mysteries or three mysteries that I want to point out. The mystery number 1/2, okay, because we are talking about two persons, is that the two most important collections and comprehensive collections of Ladino songs in the 20th century, the song does not appear. One is the Cancionero Sefaradi by Alberto Hemsi, that I had the privilege of editing the modern edition. Hemsi's amazing collection, collected between the 1920s and the 1950s throughout the Mediterranean, does not include the song. Well, maybe a coincidence. But what about the fact that in the 4 volumes of Ladino songs produced by Isaac Levy in Jerusalem in the late 50s up to the early 1970s, we do not have the song present at all. Maybe a coincidence, maybe a slip of, of these scholars that didn't bump into the song. It's hard for me to believe. The mystery number 2 just one second, it's stuck. Yeah, mystery number 2. In the amazing recorded collection of Ladino songs of Kol Israel, the Israel radio, that is today made available through the Ma'ale Adumim Institute of the Documentation of Judeo-Spanish Language and its Culture. There are several versions of the song, as we know it, as it is sung by in the concert version that I played for you, as it is sung by El Nadab, as it is sung by Yoram Gaon. However, all the versions come from the north of Morocco, not from the Ottoman Empire where we found the long text, but the short version with the refrain appears only among Moroccan Jews. And I will play you one of these recordings. These are field recordings carried by the Israeli radio in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. These are precious recordings.
Cuando el rey membró al campo salía, miraba en el cielo y en la estrellería vio una luz santa en la judería que había de nacer. Abraham vino, Padre querido, Padre bendito, luz de Israel.
I will
Juzguemos.
stop here because at this point, I will stop also my PowerPoint presentation. Because at this point, I would like to thank my student, Courtney, because in her fieldwork, she discovered additional information about this song that I didn't know. So I would like to give now the microphone, if I may say, to Courtney before we will, towards the end, play for you a couple of newer recordings of the song. Now that we more or less know the story, not to the very end, but knows the majority of the stages in the development of the story, we can go back and listen to 2 or 3 nice performances that I have selected for you to show you how far this song can go in the imagination of contemporary artists. Courtney, could you add about the song in Morocco? What do we know about the presence of Cuando Rey Nimrod or Abraham Avinu in Morocco?
All right. So as I mentioned, I believe at the beginning of the talk, and certainly beforehand, I've been researching the singer Alicia Bendayan, who's almost 99 years old. She'll be 99 in June. And so she has a wealth of knowledge in her memory only. She remembers so many Judeo-Spanish songs from the oral tradition from Tetuan, Morocco. And so I've been going through her archive, which is not only the Israel radio Kol Israel, but it's also hours and hours of interviews with the researcher Susanna Weich-Shachak, who you may be familiar with. And so out of curiosity, I was looking into how many times has Alicia sung this song and did she ever talk about it? And she did have a few conversations with Susanna about it. In one specifically, she talked a little bit about the context in which the song was sung. And so she also was very aware of Yoram Gaon's version. And she said, oh, Yoram Gaon sings it this way, but we don't sing it this way, we sing it another way, which is very similar to the Moroccan version that Edwin just presented. And in addition, she also mentioned, Susanna asked her, do you sing this line, La Mujer de Terra? And Alicia said, no, we don't sing this stanza at all. And she also said that they sing it, the students in the yeshiva would sing it. They would also sing it at parties as well.
That's extremely interesting. I heard from my dear teacher of blessed memory, Jacob Hassan in Madrid, that the girls, the girls choir in Tetuan used to sing the song. It was a girl's song that he said. The girls sing this song. So all these amount to information that, in a way, pinpoints to these 2 specific communities in northern Morocco, particularly the community of Tetuan, where Alicia is from, as the origin of the version that we know. So the issue is how this version reached Paris. Certainly it reached Paris through immigrants from Morocco. The Moroccan Jewish presence in Paris was absolutely noticeable. So what we can see is that this version is perpetuated, then imprinted by Al-Ghazi, and then in recordings based on the Al-Ghazi transcription. That perpetuates this specific version. However, Yoram sings the stanza La Mujer de Terash, which is, you remember, Courtney, is characteristic of the Turkish Jews, not of the Moroccan Jews. And I think that what happened very clearly is that Isaac Levy knew more stanzas, and they adapted the stanzas to the melody. Do you have any idea, Courtney, about what can be the origin of this melody, of this catchy melody? No? Well, let me tell you what I think, what I always thought and still think, but I never succeeded in proving that. I think the song comes from the repertoire of the light Spanish operetta that was very famous in North Morocco, from the zarzuela. This song sounds so much as like that repertoire. I have asked the greatest scholars of zarzuela in Spain. They went for me over thousands of scores to see if they can discover the melody, and still to no avail. However, particularly the mode of the melody and the structure of the refrain, of song and refrain, I mean chorus, verse and chorus of a popular song, certainly points toward that type of repertoire, of which we know the Jews from North Morocco knew many other songs in that style. Moreover, there is another version of the copla sung in Constantinople, in Turkey. Particularly, we have a wonderful version by the great singer Berta Aguado, that she sings La Mujer de Teras in a totally different musical style, very Turkish, very heavy. We won't play it now because we don't have time, but certainly a totally different musical tradition that relates to that Makam Sabah that we saw in the Judeos, in the version from Istanbul. So we have then two musical histories of the song. One became extremely famous and global. The other one remains more archival, even though the voice of Berta Aguado now is very much known by people who love songs in Judeo-Spanish. So to end this discussion and to give all our dear friends and colleagues who are attending us the opportunity to intervene, let's go and finish this presentation by playing a couple of more of these of versions from the song. I thank all our colleagues who are writing me chats. I don't want to go now to the chats. I will go back once we finish the presentation. One interesting version of the song was published in 1992 in Madrid by the group Raíces, Roots. What is incredible here is that the text that they are singing is the text from the manuscript of David Cohen, because they got it from the book by Elena Romero. When I told you that a printed book has its own agency on performance, here you have the vivid example of that. Let's hear just a few bars from the group Raíces. 1992, of course, was a memorable year for Sephardic music. 500 years of, I wouldn't say celebration of the expulsion of the Jews from Spain, but of the marking of that historical event, and an incredible amount of recordings of Judeo-Spanish songs were issued on that year.
Cuando Ereinimbro al campo salía, miraba en el cielo y en la estrella, viva luz santa en la judería, que había de nacer Abraham Avinu, Padre querido, Padre bendito, luz de Israel. Abraham Avinu, Padre querido, Padre bendito, luz de Israel.
Of course, they took the melody of Yoram Gaon, okay, which now we know is probably a melody from North Africa, and they set up to the text that they learned from the book by Elena Romero. So we have like a new creation. The version by Yoram Gaon, everybody knows, like Courtney says. Also, Alicia Ben-Dayan learned that version because she lives in Israel since the early 1960s, if I remember well. Courtney, correct me if I am mistaken. And therefore, she is also able in a fieldwork situation to say, well, I am aware of that modern version, by this distinguished Israeli star, but we have another version. So she's the only one with the capability of differentiate between the different lines of transmission. The song, the melody became so famous that a cantor in Brazil, an Ashkenazi cantor, set the Veshamru to the melody of Avraham Avinu. And Avraham Avinu appears also in a collection of klezmer music, so it's now a klezmer piece, unrelated to the original text. And I just choose for you a couple of other modern performances to wrap up this discussion. One is a very interesting Israeli group called Ladino. I guess it's a combination of ballad and Ladino, a young group. And I pointed out here a few phrases from how they present themselves and what they do. Fresh, yet deeply authentic interpretations of Sephardic and Ladino melodies. Full, fresh dialogue with the trans-Mediterranean past. Egyptian darbuka, Armenian duduk, Mediterranean gypsy grooves, and so on and so on. So the song in Ladino now, it's a player in the world of global world music, going in so many different directions, interpreted totally unrelated to the historical truth, to what researchers know. Now, my position, my friends, to be sure, and I hope there is no misunderstanding, I have great respect for all these artists. They can do what they want because we live in a free world where artistic creativity is open to all. My role as researcher is to interpret what they do, not to tell them what to do. You are singing the wrong version. This is not the correct text. Sing bendicho instead of bendito is bad. You are Hispanicizing the song. This is not my role. My role is just to observe what is being done. So let's listen to Ladino, to their version. Example, the coming one, because of lack of time, but the song is presented also as a Celtic song with this Irish artist. We don't have time. Our last example is one of the most important Baroque and hype Baroque ensembles of today, Apollo's Fire. They have their own version too, and here Avraham Avinu turns a little bit into a Bach cantata, if I may say, with different soloists, with a choir, and of course with the Baroque orchestra, but combined with, so to speak, ethnic instruments.
cuerpo salía, miraba en el cielo y en la estrellería, vi una luz santa en la judería que había de nacer Abraham Avinu, Padre querido, Padre bendito, luz de Israel. Abraham Avinu, Padre querido, Padre bendito, luz de Israel. La mujer de Terach quedó preñada, de día en día le preguntaban de qué tenéis la cara tan demudada. Ella ya sabía el bien que tenía. Abraham Avinu, Padre querido, Padre bendito, luz de Israel. Abraham Avinu, Padre querido, Padre bendito, luz de Israel.
Okay. Courtney, did you like that last performance?
I mean, it was very interesting. It was very interesting to see how many different ways you can take the song in different directions.
Absolutely.
Also,
you
the
saw
soloists,
yeah.
the soloists were a bit improvisatory in terms of their melodies as well. I don't know if that was written into the piece or if they just improvised on the spot.
Yeah, I think they improvised. I mean, they just reinterpreted the melody, not to repeat it exactly and to make it more interesting. Also, the combination of instruments from so different cultures. You have an Irish harp, you have an Hungarian cymbalom, you have a darbuka, you have an oud, and of course the Baroque ensemble. So that makes also a sound that is basically classical Western, but totally painted with the colors of so many non-Western instruments. And I think that that's also very important. So at this point, I think we are done. And Mark or Geraldine, I will be glad to answer questions to our distinguished.
No, and thank you.
Yeah, and thank you all for your attention, for inviting us, and thank you to Courtney for dialoguing. And you can ask Courtney also questions. She has a lot to say.
So thank you so much. So why don't we open it up for questions, and feel free to just call on people.
And meanwhile, I will just read the chat, okay, Mark, to see if there are.
Sure, that's fine.
Please.
And I wonder whether Courtney would like to share her screen and play us the field recording that she was showing us before.
Oh, I had Alicia's version from COZ Israel.
Oh, please play. Please play.
I can play that as well.
Please.
Here, I'll do that. Okay. Make sure the sound is on. All right. So this is Alicia's. This is a recording that was done in the early 1980s by Gladys Pimienta, who was working for Moshe Shaul, and they had their whole project to record all the Ladino songs.
Cuando el rey Nimrod al campo salía, miraba en el cielo y en la estrellería, vio una luz santa en la judería que debía de nacer. Abraham vino, Padre querido, Padre bendito, luz de Israel. Saludemos al Padre y también al Hijo, que por su zehut nos venga el Goel y nos lleve a tierra de Israel, y por tanto adoraremos al grande su nombre. Abraham vino, Padre querido, Padre bendito, luz de Israel.
Yeah, so that's probably the earliest field recording of Alicia. I don't believe that Henrietta Yurchenko, for instance, who recorded Alicia in 1956, recorded that specific song, which is also something to take note of.
Yeah.
Although she does. In Edwin, in your book, you have a version of Yurchenko's text, I think, in the book, as well as Manuel Alvar, who recorded Alicia during the same time in the 1950s.
So Courtney, Alicia was recorded by a tremendous amount of people.
That's right. Yeah, Alicia is very rare as a singer because she has been recorded almost her entire lifetime. I mean, she was born in 1922, but already in the 1950s, she had Spanish researchers coming, Larrea Palacin, as well as Manuel Alvar, who was a linguist, philologist, and they recorded her singing wedding songs, romances, everything. And then Henrietta Yurchenko, just a few years later, came from the United States, and those recordings went on to be published by Smithsonian Folkways and got renowned that way. And then Alicia moved to Israel, and then Susanna Weich-Shachak discovered Alicia actually through Alicia's brother, Salvador, because Susanna was recording in a synagogue. And then her brother told Susanna, oh, you must record my sister. And then Moshe Shaul, who was part of Kol Israel, actually learned about Alicia through Larrea Palacin. He was in conversation with those Spanish researchers. Amazing. And Larrea told Moshe Shaul, you must record this woman. She has a beautiful voice. She remembers everything. So that's quite an interesting little fact, because you see how the different researchers and community are interacting. And then over the course of Alicia's lifetime, she's provided such a strong foundation of knowledge about Judeo-Spanish song from Morocco.
Amazing, like almost 70 years of a person being recorded by generations of scholars. Can you remind us who were the last scholars to record Alicia?
That was us. Yeah, we recorded Alicia actually on Zoom because of the pandemic.
And she's 99.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. She kept reminding us she's 98 years old and a half.
So. Okay, if you can return the screen to the public. Yeah, I think that Judith Cohen, who is with us here, she recorded that too. She recorded Alicia.
Yes, I did. I recorded Alicia in, I think, the early 90s, maybe 91 or 93.
Yeah, so Judith, you join a very distinguished gallery of people who interview the same info. I think she's unique in the Jewish world.
And by the way, I'm not sure, but Henrietta's recordings at the Library of Congress, if you check them, they might, because she has recordings that are not on that album.
Yeah,
and I have a copy of them all at home at the Library of Congress. You just have to check them. Yeah.
Yes, I checked that. Now, regarding some of the questions, first of all, let me see. Yeah, first of all, how can be a Juderia, a Jewish neighborhood, when Abraham was born? Okay, my friends, we're talking about a folk song, okay, that was invented in a much later period on the basis of the Midrashim. And of course, the poet actually using this word juderia, which is a very specific term for Jewish neighborhood in North Africa and in the Ottoman Empire, reveals that the song is certainly a song written in a much later period. So that's how we have a juderia before Abraham was born. Then there is a version of Weber Pasternak published, repeating several. Yeah, well, my friends, there are so many reproductions of the same score being published again and again by several publishing houses and arrangers. Here you mentioned the arranger of our dear Tzipora Yochsberger, Zichrona Livracha. She did an arrangement too of the song, and there are so many. Now, regarding mystery number 3, I'm sorry, I misled you. So there are only 2 mysteries, but mystery number 1 is divided into 2, includes Alberto Hemzi and Itzhak Levi. Then Cantor Neil is asking the difference between Makam Seba, Makam Hijaz. These are 2 very different makams, that is to say, the scale of each makam. Of course, Hijaz, you all know, is very much characterized by that augmented second. Makam Seba or Saba is characterized actually by a diminished fourth at the beginning. It has a very special flavor, that makam. Let's see, Jack is asking, and I think that Judith already answered, why it's pronounced with jota. Like I say, with bendito, bendicho, juderia, juderia. This Alicia Bendayan and all the informants from North Africa, from Tetuan and from Tangier and from Alcázar Quibir, Arcilia, Larache, from all these communities, they are speakers of modern Spanish. Even their own dialect of Jaquetia, the old Judeo-Spanish language of North Morocco, that is, by the way, one of the versions of Judeo-Spanish with heavy Arabic component. That language is now an issue of folkloric memory, even for the Jews from North Africa themselves. So they speak like people in Madrid. So they say juderia, bendito, etc., etc. Regarding Niels, you are talking about the version in, let me see, yeah, in Hannah Miller's. Well, let me tell you, that's a very problematic book. It's a copy, counterfeit from many versions. You can read a very detailed review of that book by our beloved teacher, another teacher that we lost, Professor Samuel Armistead. Sam wrote a critique in a way showing how the Millers simply copy from other anthologies. And it's a pity that people copy without quoting the origin. So I assume that the Miller version is the version taken from Al-Ghazi, from Leon Al-Ghazi's Shant Sephardi. I think I answer most of the chat. So if there is another question, please. We still have a little time. We allowed a lot of time for you to ask. If you want about other Sephardic songs, Courtney and I are open to answer.
Mark asked the question, Mark Kligman.
Mark, can you ask your question? Or you...
Mark Kligman has a question in chat.
I'm happy to ask it, but as I wrote there, it just seems that some tunes in different traditions and different cultures have luck. You know, they sort of capture the imagination of people. they're performed, and we can think of certain klezmer tunes. I mean, every culture, you know, sort of has this, not just the Jewish phenomenon.
Yeah.
And you know, then they get, you know, just invented histories, invented stories, you know, and everyone waxes nostalgic. I'm just curious from the perspective of the two of you who've done a lot of research, and other people who are here as well. Why did this tune become the lucky tune for it? And being, I know another topic, but I'm just curious what other Ladino tunes are sort of in this pantheon of like the lucky tunes.
Yeah, well, that's an excellent question. Mark, the first answer is very simple. A good tune is a good tune, and it catches, and that's it. So I wish I knew the formula of how to compose a good tune, because I wouldn't then be in the business of musicology. I will writing songs. I will be doing far better financially than as a musicologist. So the song is catchy, is good, is short, is very symmetrical. It has so many characteristics that made it a very good tune. Regarding the second question, yes, there is a canon of Ladino songs that runs globally. Depending on how much you count, there are between 20 and 30 songs that are the most recorded ones. I had a student who did a very interesting MA thesis exactly on this subject, on the creation of the modern canon of Ladino songs. And she did statistics, just counting by published versions, I mean, published versions of text, published versions of scores and recordings. There are several tunes that compete with Cuando el Rey Nimrod over the, how do you say, the top 10 of the Ladino chart, of the Ladino global chart. I would imagine that Abrit Megalanika is another song that has hundreds of recordings. I have written about that song in another occasion. The first chapter of my book speaks about the song A la Una Yo Nací, which is also one of the most recorded ones. It's a very interesting song because it has roots in Spanish folklore, and the Jewish version is just one out of hundreds that exist in the Iberian world. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. I can sing that for you. The a la una is a la una nací yo, a la dos me bautizaron, a las tres tomé amante, a la cuatro yo nací. Okay, yo me casé por un amor. Well, Judith Cohen is there. She can sing that better than I can do.
Alma, vida, corazón.
That's it. And then you have Abrid Megalanika, que ya va a amanecer, Abrid Megalanika, que ya va a amanecer, Abris me llamo Sabro, mi lindo amor, Abris ya lo sabro, que lindo yo. By the way, Abris Megalanika has a very interesting Yiddish version, Bronchele, and that's another different story. Who was first there, the Yiddish version or the Jewish version or the Ladino version?
Edwin, I'm just gonna burst that bubble. That let me in through your window, and if you don't let me in the door, I'll come in through your window. It's not just Yiddish and Branchela, which I sing all the time. It's English and it's French and it's,
absolutely,
you know,
that's you.
I just sang a Croatian version at a Zoom the other day.
So that's what I was about just to say, that the song basically is not originally Ladino only or Yiddish only, but it has deep roots in European folklore, and we have Basque versions, and particularly there is a very interesting Russian version recorded in the 19th century. So there are a plethora of sources for that song. Another song I wrote about in my book is the song Bendigamos al Altísimo, that many of you, I assume, sing. And that song has a totally different story. Is the only really more paraliturgical Jewish song in Ladino that I speak about in the book. I could write a chapter about every single song. So for the book, I selected 6 songs. Some of them are much less known, but They have a fascinating story. One of them is a song about incest, a very sad song that I tried to prove that it's a very modern version of Romance de Ciegos, of songs that the blind singers used to sing in the markets in Spain. And somehow some Jew picked up on this song, and it became a widespread song only about among Turkish Jews. But here you see I mentioned this because you see the agency of the scholar. I recorded this song from very fine Bulgarian Jewish singer, Dora Seroussi, from Jaffa, Israel. And that version was published in a CD that appeared in France called Chant Judeo-Espagnol de la Méditerranée Orientale, Judeo-Spanish songs from the Eastern Mediterranean. That CD had a tremendous, I would say, success for a CD of two ladies singing without any accompaniment. That's as a pure field recordings of Berta Aguado and Dora Seroussi. And because the song was recorded there, after a few years, French singers started to sing it from the CD that I edited. So you see here that scholars, and Judith Cohen can bring a testimony because she's much more in the intersection between the scholarly world and the performing world, that we can alter the history of a song by publishing it or by creating an arrangement. I myself have arranged songs in Ladino for Israeli schools. So we are all involved in the making of the very same musical heritage that we are studying. Someone asked if Bendigamos from Seattle's Reverend Benaroya, that's his name, my dear Reverend Benaroya, yes, that's the same song. Everybody sings more or less the same text and the same version. I hope that when the book appears in English, you can read all this in more detail.
Wonderful. Really fascinating. Anybody else want to raise a hand or a virtual hand so we can? Oh yes, Agnes wants to ask, and then Rachel. Agnes first.
Am I unmuted?
Yes.
Okay. Excuse my ignorance. So I've got two questions. One is the augmented second characteristic to the whole, well, to most Ladino songs, or just the one we heard? And the other question may be not appropriate, but I never met any Jewish person from Uruguay, and I'm interested in your Jewish education and music education in Uruguay before you left for Israel, but this may be inappropriate here.
Thank you for your questions. Well, the first question is very easy to answer. The answer is no. Okay, so there are a few songs in Ladino who have the augmented second, but the majority doesn't. There are many scales in the songs on Ladino, major scales, minor scales of different types, Dorian, Mixolydian, etc. So it's very difficult. And of course, many Ladino songs are in Makam, not in Western scales, but with Turkish Makams in particular. So it's a very widespread and diversified tonal repertoire in terms of tonality. Regarding myself, I would rather not talk about myself now on this occasion, but you are most welcome to write me an email. My email is the easiest email to find around the world, considering how many people write to me that I never gave them my email. So you can, please do not hesitate to write me, and I will tell you certainly how the Jewish education and musical education was in Uruguay, okay? Thank you for your interest. Thank you for your
Thank
interest.
you.
Yeah.
Rachel?
Thank you. There was something that I just got a little confused about when you were talking. Is this melody that we're talking about, is that the only melody for this text, or is there a second one?
There is a second one. Glad you are asking me, because I want to make clear. There is a second melody which I didn't present now for the sake of clarity and focusing on one melody only. There is a melody that, by the way, Rachel, appears on the same CD that I just mentioned, published in Paris in 1995, with Berta Aguado singing. She starts her song, the song there doesn't start Cuando el Rey Nimrod. It starts La Mujer de Terra. So it starts from the second stanza. And she sings in a very heavy Turkish style. First of all, it's a melody without clear beat. It has no beat, okay? So therefore, it's very ornamented, very Makamic type of song. So she sings a couple of the stanzas that appeared in those written sources that I showed from Turkey. But she doesn't start from Cuando el Rey Nimrod, which is interesting. Okay, so the first stanza, which is the staple of the song, gets erased, and we start from the fact that Abraham's mom is hiding in the cave. Okay, which is interesting. Perhaps someone along the road, and this is totally a theory that I'm bringing now up of the top of my mind, but perhaps someone saw on that beginning with the issue of the stars that there is a Christian element there, and they just tossed that stanza away, and they started from the real story of Abraham with his mother. But I have no proofs for that, okay? It's just my idea for you to explain why the first stanza was dropped. By the way, you saw that the Apollo's Fire version, they sing the version of Yoram Gaon and the version of Al-Ghazi. So they sing three stanzas, okay? They sing the stanza of the beginning, they sing the stanza of La Mujer de Terah, and they sing the stanza of the Moel, of the Brit Milah. So they make a mix of the two most famous versions of the song.
Edwin, can I just add about that melody, that other melody, La Mujer de Terra, because Shoshana, I can't remember the name of the singer. I think it was with an M, Mazal Tov somebody. She has a much simpler version of that tune. Because, La Mujer de Terra preñadas.
That's true.
La Mujer de Terra preñadas. So it's similar to Berta's, but a much simplified.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Mazal Tov Lazar, that's the name of the city.
Mazal Tov Lazar, that's it.
Yeah,
From
absolutely.
Bulgaria, I think
I forgot.
Turkish border, if I remember correctly.
Absolutely.
Are those the only two recordings of that alternate tune, or are there more?
La Mujer de Terra? Yeah, there are more. There are more recordings. If you look, I hope online you can find. If I find more, I can send more so that you can. Yeah, I think that the CD that I published, the version by Berta Aguado, is in YouTube. Someone has put all that CD on YouTube. I don't know if it's legal or not, but
it's there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's there. Yeah, it's there. So Mark and Geraldine, if you allow me, in 3 minutes I have to leave. So it has been a great pleasure for me to be here with you. I can see Hillary, how are you? Long time since I have seen you. And of course, all the rest of my friends, Ellie in Jerusalem, Jack in Philadelphia. It's like being in family in this conversation in Zoom. I want to thank Courtney Blue, my dear student, that it's just about to finish her amazing thesis on Alicia Ben Dayan, and I hope that after she finished the thesis, she will publish at least one article about this fascinating woman of 98 and a half years old that has been recorded over 70 years by at least 6 or 7 different scholars from 3 different continents. So that's an achievement that very few Jewish singers, folk singers, I think had. And all what I can wish you here from New Hampshire is good health, and that we can start to reconvene in person in the near future. Thank you.
Edwin,
Thank you so much, Edwin, for your really fabulous presentation, as always, giving us wonderful ideas to think about. And in my introduction of you, of saying how much you achieved, it's only the beginning, I know. We're just so impressed with the first half. We're looking forward to the second half. So
Thank you.
we wish you all the best, and a big thanks to Courtney as well.
We thank you so much for your help in actually creating this International Forum for Jewish Music Studies. You'll remember that you and Mark and I sat and had breakfast in London at the Royal National Hotel.
I remember. Yeah. The breakfast wasn't that good because it was in England, but the company was excellent. Yeah.
Well, you came up with this this name and this concept, so we're very grateful to you, and it's been wonderful to have you with us.
I apologize that I cannot be every time due to other commitments, but now that we are here and it's a different time, I may be able to show a little bit more and participate. Okay.
Excellent. And it's been lovely to have Courtney. Now, although Edwin has to go, the rest of you don't have to go. If you want to talk, sing, ask questions, suggest things, we'll be very happy to continue. So raise your hand if you want to do something, and thanks once more, Edwin.
A pleasure.
For bringing Courtney along, because she's been delightful, and we
she's great, and I hope that more of my students will be able to show up, and if anybody has a question that will pop up tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, please write and I will try to answer to all of you. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Edwin. Geraldine, do you want to tell us what's coming up next in our next couple of weeks?
Yes, why not? I might have to call up my, my page to see what's coming up next, because there's so many wonderful events that I don't necessarily have them all immediately in my head. But we have some amazing talks coming up, and they are, let me just see, where's my page? Event. I don't know why it's not showing. It's probably somewhere in the back. Who remembers what's next week? Who remembers what's next week? You can tell me.
Our section next week is Jeremiah Lockwood and Mayor Baruch Cohen, one of the foremost liturgical experts in Brooklyn Satmar Hasidic community, and with his son Yoel Cohen. And the week after that, we'll have Abigail Wood and Andres Schmitkes discussing the Yiddish Summer Weimar work that they've done, along with what Abigail Wood has done in the University of Haifa. And we'll have a composer and focus session on May the 4th with Marcia Dubrow and Michael Isaacson.
Wonderful, thank you. So, who wants to sing something? Or say something. Otherwise, we can adjourn till next week. It's up to you. Judith Panolis, did you want to say something, or did you just want to wave goodbye? Maybe she was waving goodbye. So, well, Courtney, it's been really wonderful to have you along, and we really look forward to your book, we're very happy to publish it. We're working on various publications, so watch the space and see what we can come up with. And yeah.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure to meet all of you. And it's so great to now know that this space exists, and I look forward to joining you guys in the future.
Excellent. Lovely.